Hey everyone, welcome back to the Connected Ideas Project podcast, Tech Policy in Our Lives. This is a really special episode for a couple reasons. First, this is actually the first human version of this podcast. You usually listen to Google's
I do
AI
not believe
summaries of
you.
things. You usually listen to Google's AI summary of some of these things. This also happens to be the 50th episode of this podcast and the last episode of the first year of the Connected Ideas Project. So it's a set just for that milestone, but actually, more importantly, this is also being released on the first day, the debut of my first science fiction novel and novel overall, which is more profound for me than possible. So we're going to have a really awesome conversation. First, I'll give you a little bit more context, but my guest today is Sean Platt, brilliant science fiction writer and kind of all around creative extraordinaire. So, Sean, thanks for joining me.
Hello. I will stop talking in a robot voice now. Here's me proving I'm human. I do not speak. Actually, I do speak in M dashes, but I'll be careful to keep them to a minimum so that you know I'm real.
I appreciate that. Well, and for a little bit of context for everyone who is not already tracking the book, it's titled Synthetic Eden. We did a title change in the final hour because there's a lot of magic there. But this is a story that I've been thinking about for years. And last spring, I decided I needed to make it a reality. And so I started looking for someone who could help me make it a reality because I'm science, but I'm not always fiction. And so I looked for the fiction to my science fiction. And that's where I found Sean. So, Sean, what I would love, so I open all of my podcasts with a kind of a conversation of tell us a story, but you are a storyteller. So I want to open that to the master storyteller. And can you just start us off with a story?
Yeah, sure. Any story?
Any story.
Okay. I told this story yesterday and it might be totally inappropriate. And for that, I'm sorry if so. And it was just me being admittedly an asshole at the time. And just like so this is for context, 2 months before the pandemic. It's the last trip we took as a family. We were in New Orleans and we were having breakfast. And so I have two teenagers. And so I'm mouthing off as a father. I'm mouthing off. And I don't know why, but Mississippi comes up in conversation. And my son says, um, what's there to do in Mississippi? And like
Mm.
the fantastic father I am, I said, I don't know, be racist? We finish our conversation and and finish our breakfast. We get up from the table and I give a big hearty, goodbye to our neighbors at the next table who are clearly wonderful people. And we'd had delighted conversation exchange when we came in. I said, goodbye. And the mother turns to me and says, we're from Mississippi.
Oh, you get caught with your judgment out in the open.
There are a few things in my life I have deserved more. It was the wrong thing to say, period. Definitely the wrong thing to say in front of my children, impressionable teenagers. And it was a really good look in the mirror and admit that you suck sometimes moment. And so I really appreciated the family at the next table calling me on my bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, it's good on them. Sometimes that stings, but you got to learn where your own biases lie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's part of the theme in this story is about biases. And I think
Yeah.
that you, as a scientist, are kind of at the edge of all of this stuff. And you really wanted to confront those ideas head on. And what was really fun about this project is that you never hit it from the side. Like you always wanted to go deeper. And there are a lot of people that come in and want to collaborate on a book, but they're not really interested in going that deep. Like once they hit the theme, um, they're good. Like let's roll forward. But you always wanted to pull the layers back, and I really enjoyed that because my previous writing partner, or one of my previous writing partners, I am definitely polyamorous when it comes to the written word. Um, but one of my previous writing partners, his name is Johnny B. Truant, and he writes a lot of like science-based books, like that. And so I'm really used to having like a scientist on the other side, but no one who so he'll bring the surface he'll bring the science to the surface. He will. He's really good at having uh, some premise that I say is kind of like impossible, and he'll make it believable. And he'll do it by explaining stuff. So that's how the science comes up in our books.
Yeah.
But your book was science ideas first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a totally different ball game that I had never played in before. And it was really fun because it was the opposite. I had to like try to make things more sciencey when I don't know what I'm talking about, but I knew that between the 2 of us, we would have the tense moments and the science, and all of that was there's our 3rd invisible collaborator who is her name's Bonnie, and she is just, like, an amazing, amazing, like, structure person, and she's
Yeah.
so good at being able to put connective tissue into the big ideas, that Titus had, and pair them with like truly emotional moments that like drive the story forward.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever be able to work with a different editor. Bonnie kind of set the bar about as high as it comes.
Well,
But one of the
I call her my forever editor. Like exactly.
it's true. But one of the reasons I like to open up with this, like, tell us a story and not with any guidelines, is because it shows a lot about a person when the story they choose. And I love that you start with a story of humility, because that's actually where this whole thing started. I had a story in my head, but I'm the science person, right? I've been taught to write in a very boring and methodical way for all of my career. And so I had to admit to myself that if I wanted the story to come to life, I needed to work with someone who was an expert on that emotional fiction, that telling that narrative in a way that really resonates with people. And so that was a humble sandwich I had to eat when I started looking for a co-author. So I'm curious, like, I reached out to you. I would love your kind of hot take on, or what was your hot take on getting that cold email?
Well, it was actually really great because I know I know I've told you this privately before, but I love saying things publicly. When you came to me, it had been like a little kind of a parade of inquiries. And so, people kind of broadcast a lot, immediately. And, it's a few things. It's like kind of how they show up in like their posture. How excited are they about this? Right. Well, your posture was like, this is so cool. I can't wait to see what happens. Like you exude curiosity, and so immediately I'm like, oh, this guy has an idea and he's curious about how to get it to the finish line. And that's one of my favorite things to see, right?
Yeah,
That's just like, oh, that's a creative narcotic. Like I love curiosity. I made my son, well, I didn't make him. I brought home from a mastermind I went to one time, and it was the thing that you need to work on the most, and you wear this little bracelet with that thing, like remind yourself. And I brought him one home that said, "Be curious," because I felt like that's what he needed more. Like, don't just scroll on TikTok, go deeper. Like, be curious. That's the secret of a really good life is curiosity. And he wore it for a year, like didn't take it off, and it was awesome. And I think that you brought so much obvious curiosity, but then that was paired with like knowledge, and what I would compare it to is, and I've never actually had this experience, but I'm sure it would be awesome, is like working with like an actual detective, who,
yeah,
like that would be really cool. I did write a book once with a sleep doctor who just knew all kinds of stuff about sleep, and it was the same where you could put the storytelling in this larger container, and so when you came, I knew within a minute, this is gonna be a fun call. Like, that was pretty immediate, but,
yeah, yeah,
like, with every new story or, you made a lot of comparisons, and you also had, this other mix that I really love in a person immediately, which is, that bridge between, complete ambition and, like, the things that you wanna do, and the humility to know exactly where you are in that space. And that is such a rare and beautiful quality because people usually aren't as great at being one side or the other. They either have way more confidence in their abilities than they deserve, or they're too timid. They're like, "This idea is too big. I don't know how to hide it." And within 15 minutes, you had definitely expressed, "Hey, I've got a great idea. I know who I am thematically. I know what I want to say, and I have the science background to back it all up. I have no idea how to do like act 1, 2, 3." And we were like, "We write in 4 acts." And you're like, "See?" And then so I really loved seeing that in real time. Some of the the getting from, you know, A to B, that first transition can take a few different calls, and we were done on the first call. Like this was, "Oh, this is cool. This is exciting." But that's before I knew it was a trilogy that wasn't even a trilogy.
Well, no one's ever said it's easy to be my friend. This is not intending to be a brag fest or a compliment fest for me, but I appreciate that. What I think is fascinating is that there are big questions that I have been grappling with scientifically that involve like bioethics and what does the future of technology mean for us and humanity. And I thought that so much of the work I've been reading in the policy and science space were actually a lot of setup that sounded like world building in itself, which is why I was like, this sounds like it needs room to breathe to be able to answer some of these questions. And without giving away the story, that I mean, really, the focus is about the ethics of human genetic engineering, right? We had to set up a way that so often these conversations there is a way to find your academic corner that helps you say, all right, yeah, but unless these conditions are met, I don't have to engage in this because I hold something true that may or may not be true. Um, and so it's easy to like gloss over some of those things. But I wanted to take a moment to read a piece of feedback that I got from someone about this book from one of our advanced readers because it just so sums up where we have hit and what I was hoping to get out of it. So this, I got a message from someone that I know, kind of from the professional uh, internet sphere, the socials, as we describe them, and this person said, "Hi, I just finished my advanced copy of Synthetic Eden. I'll write an actual review, but I wanted to tell you personally how grateful I am that you wrote and shared it. I've been working in science and tech policy for a while, and so in my mind, I had already been contemplating the questions, or so I thought. But reading this still led me to surprise myself with opinions and beliefs I didn't fully realize I had, or rather, hadn't fully let myself think about." That is exactly what
Yeah, that
I
was your
had
pitch,
dreamed about.
basically.
That's exactly what I had dreamed about last spring, well over a year ago. And to hear it come to life like that is just so cool. So I'm curious from your perspective, from a science fiction professional, like what did you think and feel about this story? I mean, this is a long process of really detailed world building and detailed outline building before the writing even starts, which I don't think many people realize. So talk to us a little bit about that and like how this specific project went for you.
Yeah, so this was, I would compare this to, I really, really love to crib terminology from film and television. So I would
Yeah,
say that this project had a lot of reshoots. And so
yeah.
there was
Well, that's
like,
because I'm a pain in the butt as a friend.
well, well, it was interesting because like Titus said earlier, we do a lot on the pre-production side, like kind of an obnoxious amount, where most people will get a fairly straightforward outline and then they'll get to writing. But because of Bonnie, like she is a structure person, like, and she's very detail oriented. So her outlines, when I write from them, probably are about, I want to say, 3 times longer than a typical studio outline that we have, but just her level of detail is kind of insane. And then I will take that and write a longer version of it, where basically I'm taking her outline and I'm not really making story choices. All the story choices are made. Like between me, Bonnie, and Titus, everything's been decided. So it's really about, okay, you, not to say it's paint by numbers, but at that point it kind of is a little bit. So I know this thing has to happen, and I have to connect it to this next thing that happens, and I do that through dialogue or description or something, but I'm not changing story elements.
I think of it more of like connect the dots, where you add dots between the dots that we have already
Yeah,
pre-decided to
yeah,
get a very intricate image, right? It's no longer a geometric horse,
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
stallion.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and you have to be able to, properly paint over everything that's there for you and then connect it, and so our but when we were working on the first book, and I'm losing a little bit on my timeline here because this was over a year,
Yeah.
so, but at some point, we're like, "Oh, this is actually going to be a trilogy," and so that made, what we call the first version of the book, a discovery draft. And so, an outline is usually like a Bonnie outline, I'll say, is maybe 25 to 30,000 words, and that'll expand to a 70 to 80,000 word book. Think I think this book is 137,000 words off the top of my head.
It is. Yep. It's a lot of big ideas in there.
Yeah, so that first book just became a discovery draft. So basically, the outline turned into the draft, and then the draft turned into the outline for the next book. And so we just, added in our story elements and kind of rolled forward with that. But what I really loved about this from the very beginning, because it definitely did get bigger in scope than I imagined. Um, I don't think uh, I don't think Titus is as surprised by the end result. I think he's happy about what it turned into and the quality because,
Yeah.
he's got the reception is what he set out for, but this was much, much clearer in Titus's mind from the beginning than it was mine. My job was to, along with Bonnie, interpret that into something, and that's always kind of a high wire act because you are taking someone else's dream, essentially, and they're like, "Yeah, but that's not the shade of blue I was picturing." It can be a difficult needle to thread, but you weren't going for a specific, uh, shade in your head. You were going for the best possible story, and that's how we operate as a studio. So, no idea is right. The idea that is right is whatever is best for the overall story. It does not matter where it comes from, and unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't matter what else that changes in the draft, if you're still at the outline stage. But this one, from the very beginning, I loved that there was so much world building. I love that there was such an expansive timeline. I love that we were, once we knew we were going through a trilogy, the timeline got much longer, and that gets very interesting because you can explore with so much more depth. But even with the questions that we're asking, there's a term in film and television, of course, called day after tomorrow science fiction. And that's code word for inexpensive to film. So there are no aliens, there are no spaceships. It's the day after tomorrow. I've never seen anyone consistently do this better than Black Mirror because
Yeah.
Black Mirror will
I
introduce
love Blackbeard.
yeah, it's amazing because they will introduce some piece of technology that is not difficult to believe at all once they contextualize it, and then they're like, "Well, and here's how the world is fucked because of this thing." And that's I do love that take. It's really reflective of where we are. Like, you can't watch a Black Mirror episode and not reflect on where we are. And
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like watching the news.
yes, it is. I don't even remember what the episode was, but there's one I watched recently, like within the last few months from the 2nd season, and the technology it's already there. Like
Yeah,
it
I
wasn't a
know.
leap anymore, and I'm like, "Oh,
Right.
man, this is crazy town." And so I think that, that take is really interesting, but you were so much more interested in the long-term consequences. You
Yeah.
were so much more
Which is
interested.
really hard to talk about in like a policy world. Like, how do you understand the existential risks? But there's a lot of X risk conversations around like doomsday scenarios. I more mean like, what does it mean to be human? And that's really the premise sets up.
Yes, what does it mean to be human, and how are we directing that evolution now? Because we are, and I love that, like, your premise was basically one you can't argue with. Like, the science is sound. This could happen. It's not it's not the kind of sci-fi that in the company we call it we say give it a unicorn. So if you want something that you kind of don't have to explain, you just want to hand wave to the reader, we call it give it a unicorn. In in the movie Thank You for Smoking, I love this moment where the smoking lobby is trying to get cigarettes into movies more because they're not allowed to do it anymore, and they want it to be written in as part of the story. So they're going to have this spaceship. They're out in space, and the actors have just had sex, and they're going to light up a cigarette. And one of the characters is like, "Well, you can't do that. They're in space." And then the executive just waves a hand like this, and he goes, "Oh, well, they just have to invent the blah 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 defibrillator, right?" And that is the magic of being a
Yeah,
storyteller, is that you could just make something up, and as long as you have been a consistent narrator, the reader will
right.
believe it. But there was no hand waving in this book. Like,
No, I mean, one of the pieces of feedback I got was how we described the color of leaves. So, like, I knew that the people who will read something that I write are going to fact check us, right? It's like, and one a very close friend said, "I think you actually have this backwards. These aren't purple. Leaves aren't green in the real world because they absorb green light. It's because they reflect green light." It's like, ah, you're right. You're right. We will fix that. Good catch.
I love that we fixed that. I love that that came in. That tells you something about who your readers are. Also, just as a this has nothing to do with the story itself, but the joy of collaborating with you is I love how much your audience showed up. Like the
Oh my
curiosity
gosh, yeah.
that you exhibit, you bring curiosity into the world, and it seems like the people who are paying attention to the things that you're doing are that curious person. And so I love the fact that I got to work with somebody who's giving me an audience of curious readers. I think that's a gift. So if you're listening to this now, that means you. So thank you for coming along for this part. This is see, we've done all the hard work. The book is like almost here at the time that we're recording this, but you haven't read it yet. We have, and so thank you for being a part of it. This is a really fun part of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I've read this book like 40 times at this point, so it's the most time I've ever read any any book. One of the things I found so fascinating as a like a growth opportunity for me is that I have always read for entertainment, but when you read for and read for a critical eye in science, but reading for a critical eye in fiction and in story is a completely different skill set that I had never muscles I had never exercised before. And so when as we were writing this, right, this first draft became the outline for the second book, and but I had a very specific vision for how I wanted the impact of the people's implications to unfold. And I remember giving feedback to you and Bonnie that there were two very core characters, Lucas and Aisha, who, as people will read it, you'll know very quickly who they are. They are central characters of the book. And I wanted their personalities and character arcs for the entire story to change. And no one's ever said it's easy to be my friend, but I feel like that was so critical to ending up where we're at because now those characters, you understand them and you can connect with them. Not like you couldn't before, but now there's just like this subtle nuance of how they act and they behave and the gestures of kindness and the backstory of why things unfold are just so compelling.
Those were both really fun characters to write. They were because they had such specific purpose. Sometimes the 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 shit talking best friend is probably my favorite character to write in the world. Like it because
Yeah, it
anything
does
goes.
surprise me.
Right? That's really fun, but those characters don't have the weight to them, so they're fun as diversions, but when you have a character where everything they do can be observed later and dissected, and it matters to the structural integrity of the narrative that you have, that's just that's a really, really, strong place to be for a creator because you're moving people's ideas and emotions. And that was part of the mandate for the story from day one. Yes, we need the emotional hooks. We need people to care about these characters and follow their journey and care about what happens next at the end. That's just commercial fiction 101. But Titus really wanted his readers to think, and to question and to not just ask the bigger questions, but be inspired to ask the bigger questions.
Yeah, because those characters, all of the characters are designed. So Samara, who's our main character, our lead protagonist, and Aisha, who is our one of our other lead characters, they have opposing worldviews in a lot of ways. But they neither of the I think the beauty of it is that clearly neither of them are wrong worldviews. It's too black and white to say correct your worldview, incorrect worldview. And that really is reflective of the kind of position that people have on these topics in reality. Um, and so when like there's a scene where Aisha is confiding in Samara about why her worldview is the way it is, and you just say, "Oh, if that were me, I would have that worldview too." Of course she does, right? But then at the same time, you're so frustrated with how she interacts with the characters in the story, and you just like as a reader want to hate her, but as a person totally understand her. And I think it's just I've never seen that develop. I've never been part of that development, and it was amazing.
Yeah, if you can give your villains texture and say like, "Hey, you're not a villain," because of this context, and it's different than making someone likable. And here's an example where I think this was done really well. In have you seen Kill Bill 2? Uh, Okay, all right. So you know the end of Kill Bill 2, where you've been waiting a movie and 2/3 to see her kill Bill, and she comes in, and all of a sudden, um, bang bang, mommy, you're dead, and she's got a dart in her, and like, okay, now we have to completely re-examine what we think of Bill, because
Right.
now he's giving context and he's doing all of this stuff, and you're like, well, he was a ruthless killer. Why is she surprised that this would be the response? And it's not that
Right.
you identify with a ruthless character, but it's that Tarantino is so genius at giving context to every situation. Context shows you who a person is. No one is the bad guy in their own story, except for the very, very, very rare Snidely Whiplash character that's like 1% of characters that is like, "Mwahaha, I love being a bad guy." Most bad guys do not love being bad guys. Most bad guys are bad guys by circumstance, right? At some point, when someone does something evil, at some point they have not even evil. When anybody does something, it is because they have been positively rewarded for that behavior at some previous point in their life. I'm sitting there at a restaurant with my children, and I'm saying something I clearly don't even believe just to get a laugh, because all through my lifetime I've gotten laughter for saying inappropriate things. And
Right.
so, like, did I learn more from that exchange? Yes, because somebody else called me on it. So now the positive thing, I'm much, much more less likely to do something stupid like that because I was called on it. And that became the positive thing because my children got to see, oh, dad got called on it. Now he doesn't do that anymore. Not that I did it
Yeah.
all the time. This really was just me being a jerk. But anyway, I think that's what you want to see. That's the growth that you if you put it on the page in the right way, then the reader really feels it. And when they
Right.
feel it, then it actually gets in their head a little bit and it can change the way they think. And I've said from the first time I started writing, and I didn't go to school to be a professional writer. I actually dropped out of school, and I
I
found
love.
I found my way to write. And from the very beginning, when I started 16 years ago, my North Star has always been I want people to feel and I want people to think. And from the start of this project, that was your mandate too. So it's just been a joy.
Yeah. Well, so we talked a lot about the story, and people here know me, but who is Sean Platt, right? You've been writing, you dropped out of school, you've been writing forever, but you're not a trained originally writer. Like you've written, you should talk about how much you've written, but it's just like it's amazing when I
Yeah,
started
I've
hearing
written
about you.
enough books at this point that I honestly don't know how many books I've written. Um,
It's
but
like
it
in the hundreds.
yeah, it's somewhere between 100 and 200 books. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's over 200, but this is dude, I mean, let me give some context around this too, because I don't do this by myself. I'm a lot like Titus in that way, actually. I know what I'm gifted at, and I want to go find other people who are really gifted at the things that they're doing. So most of everything I've written, I can count. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I could totally count the number of books I've written on my own. And guess what? They're not as good. Like, they're just not.
Yeah.
I
I mean, that's a
know.
lot of the humility, right? Yeah, so
Yeah,
good.
dude, I know how to turn a phrase like nobody's business, but that's not a good book. Like, that's a good sentence or 2, you know?
Right.
And so and I do have a natural instinct for story and all of that. So I could do passable on my own, no problem. But I've never been okay with passable. And so I've always wanted to surround myself with people who are better at the things that I can never be. And so like Bonnie, so Bonnie came to this little mastermind that I had. So a little background just for people listening. I have been on the indie publishing scene for 13 years now, and wrote the book Write, Publish, Repeat, which is kind of like the indie Bible. And so I've been doing this for a long time, about I think six years now. We've been kind of not in the education space at all. But back when we were, Bonnie came to an event that I had, and it was a small mastermind, and she was really sought after in the in the space as as an editor. She's a great
The genius
development
editor.
editor.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she really is. And she had some like online teaching stuff that she wanted to grow. She bought a ticket to come to this event so that I would help her grow the business. Instead, I'm like, Bonnie, you don't need to grow that business. Can you just be my editor for like the rest of forever?
Yeah.
And it's one of the best moves I've ever made. Like it's really great. And so now hilariously, you also want to like figure out what is the best way to approach a story and what is the best like engineering path, because different I so I collaborate for a living. Our studio has around 40 storytellers, and I'm like they're all paired up differently, and I pair up with people differently. Right
Right.
now I'm writing these little like these it doesn't matter. Bonnie's amazing because she can come in and do the thing, and you always want to look for the person who can come in and do the thing, because it
Yeah.
gets you to that end result faster. And I know that people think of writing as a solo sport, and I think that that's that's been normal for a long time. You know, you like the lone writer at the keyboard pounding away, taking shots out of their whiskey tumbler, for
I would be a
inspiration.
terrible writer taking shots at a whiskey tumbler.
but but I find that the best stories come when people are pulling the best out of each other, and I'm
Right.
really
I
proud of
think
them.
the myth of the lone genius is actually a pretty detrimental myth.
I do too, and you know what? I would love to write a short with you that's science-based about that, because
Yeah,
oh,
let's do it.
also, for those of you listening, we'll get this to you sometime soonish, but we have 2 short stories that are both
That are
basically Black Mirror
good.
episodes, right?
Yeah, they're good.
Those are really fun, and we'd love to share those with you. I actually just remembered those just now.
There's a set of, well, I guess this would be a good transition to, right, this is not a one and done kind of collaboration, right? We have a, well, so we have Echoes of Tomorrow, which is what the series is called. We have a book that we're right now in pre-production daydreaming about for early next year. We've got these shorts, so like
Yeah,
Titus and
this is a
Platt
very
is a thing.
it's a very fertile collaboration.
But I would also love to. So we have book one. We briefly talked, like mentioned, outline of book two, and book three became a behemoth of wrapping up the thematic worlds hundreds of years later. For a little bit of a spoiler, talk to us, without talking about the story, but talk to us a little bit about what happened with book three.
Yeah, so hilariously, book 3 just kept getting bigger and bigger, and this was like I knew it was a whopper on the outline phase. I was like, "Oh, there is zero chance this is getting trimmed down to anything." But I still didn't know how long. Well, okay, so I'll say that in a second. So it basically became clear at some point. I'm not sure where we should divide this book, but this is going to be two books. And my biggest argument for making it two books instead of the third one is that I was still thinking that the first one, even though it needed to be rewritten, was still going to be like a little bit longer, maybe 100,000 word max. I had no idea that by the time we got to that one, the end of that one, it would be 137. And so what my argument was, readers love a consistent reading experience. So you can't give them 80, 80, 180. Like that doesn't work.
Right.
We should divide this. So then now it's 137. I don't know what the second and third one are, but I think they're all a little bit long. Like, and so it's kind of funny. I think that the first book might actually be the longest, but that works too. Like that
Yeah.
that's way better than short uber long. So
Right.
but
Yeah.
there
Well,
was
I mean, it makes sense to me also because the first book is where we really set up, right, the that kind of ethical world building.
yeah,
So this wasn't just talking about indigo water and two moons, right? We had to world build
I think you're the first
a
person alive
moral
who's ever
conflict
said the
system.
words ethical world building together.
Well, it's like you have. Well, we should write something about that. But like seriously, we had to set up a world with which we forced cognitive dissonance on the reader because you both agree with the protagonist and the antagonist because there is no right or wrong worldview, right? Depending on your background, that is the worldview that resonates. So we had to world build that, which makes sense as longer. And then the rest of the series is the implications, the echoes of those through time, the echoes of tomorrow. See where we're going there? Of the implications of that. So I think yeah, it's super cool.
And are you I think knowing you, the thing you're probably most excited about right now, if you could go out to your mailbox, you would take a physical copy of this book, which you don't have yet, over like Publishers Clearinghouse, right? Like,
Oh yeah. Oh man, but holding that is going to be amazing. My wife is wonderful, and she read the rough draft, which, side note, gave Bonnie a heart attack that I let anyone read the rough draft. But it was really good for me, and it was cool. Maggie got to see from the rough draft to the final book um, this like amazing progression of an art. But she's also refuses to buy the Kindle version now. She's like, I absolutely not. I will only buy I will buy 3 copies of the physical book, but I will not buy a Kindle version. So I need that.
well, I'm excited to add this one to my shelf too because it is I would say this is the most gratifying fiction I worked on this year. Like this is
That's
well
very cool.
in the last year. Like this has been a long project because it's 4 books. I mean, I write fast, but not fast enough to do 4 books of this caliber in less than a year. So but I am really, really proud of how they turned out.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah, I am too. And for anyone who's listening, we have the video as well as part of the newsletter. But Sean has like bookshelves behind him full of multiple copies of his novels and stuff. So it's a pretty impressive setup. And you can go find a whole bunch of the Sterling and we haven't actually said the name. Sterling and Stone is the company name. Sterlingandstone.net is the website for the publishing company, who is my publisher because they're Sean's and I publisher. It'd be silly if Sean was a co-author and we published it with someone else.
It would be silly.
um, and so you can find all these things. There'll be plenty coming out. And if you keep subscribing to Connection Ideas Project newsletter, there'll be lots more about all our cool collaborations. So Sean, like, I just want one last, like, can you wrap us up with a story? Like, what is the craziest sci-fi like process that you've had to write?
Oh, I can absolutely tell you that. This book right here. This book right here. It's called Pattern Black. I actually made this cover too. It's the only cover I've ever made. um, so it was really, really difficult. This was a producer that we were working with. This is this is pre-strike, so this thing got totally scrapped. But pre-strike, there was a producer we were working with, and we were developing IP from the ground up. And it's like, I would say it's Groundhog's Day meets The Matrix. And so the the basic premise is that okay, so it's so complicated, but basically, the way they reform prisoners in the future is they give them something called chamber therapy, and chamber therapy is where like you're in this recursive loop where you don't know you're in a simulation, so a little bit like the
Hmm.
Matrix, but the
Yeah.
simulation is the crime that you were put in prison for, and
Oh,
so
wow.
you have to keep doing it until you prove that you're reformed, and
Wow.
they and then you can get out of prison basically when you make the right series of decisions to not do it. So you're learning each time. But you can fry your brain if you do it too much, and it goes into something called pattern black. But it turns out that's actually the company who developed chamber therapy. That's what they actually want because they want mental cadavers. They basically want to experiment on functioning brains that are flatlined. And so,
Yeah. Wow.
and it just kept getting more and more and more complicated. And we're like, oh, another layer deep. and and it was so this is my other science writing partner, Johnny.
Yeah. Johnny B.
And
Turant. Yeah.
we were known for writing fast. And this book ruined him. So if you can see this on the screen, it's long. It's got to be 1,000 pages. Oh, I'm so old now. 880 pages. So it's just this whopper of a book,
Yeah.
and we got lost a lot. And so
Yeah.
the production on that was really hard, but it was the hardest book I've ever edited. Like I
Well, it's
lost
a
my
lot of story.
it's not just a lot of story, it's that because we rewrote a bunch of times and I didn't have Bonnie here. Bonnie would have saved me, because she would have structured it from the beginning, but Johnny and I don't use Bonnie, and so, and Johnny's really wordy. And so we rewrote it a couple times, and I would lose track over which version of the story we had settled on for different parts. I felt like I was schizophrenic and going crazy. It was the least fun I've ever had writing anything sci-fi. I love the finished book, but it's not like this finished 4 books, like, I can really feel the passion and, like, oh, the work is really worth it, where Pattern Black, like, I do love the story, I think it would make an amazing limited series, but, the joy of writing it
Joyous
was
time.
never eclipsed by the quality, where here I feel
Yeah.
like they were really in balance.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Well, that also reminds me, I have a biotech day after tomorrow sci-fi commentary on the criminal justice system novel idea. So we'll have to get after that sometime.
I'm ready.
Um, cool. Well, I think this is it's a good place to wrap up. But Sean, one, Bonnie, I hope you're listening to this and know that we love you.
She'll
And two,
totally listen.
Sean, I really appreciate all of this, and I hope people read the story, leave reviews. So we really need reviews because that's the flywheel magic that makes the algorithm go round. Like we are in the Black Mirror world where the world is ruled by algorithms, right? So read it, leave.
1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%. If Amazon and other booksellers knows that people like the book, then it will sell it, you know, automatically. But they need to know that you like the book and you like the authors. And you
Yeah,
like
yeah,
because they know you like the book maybe because you bought it. They know it for sure if you leave a review, and they really celebrate authors with lots of reviews, with what we like to call algo juice. So drizzle it on us. We would like a full glass, and we hope you enjoy the stories.
yeah. Thanks, Sean.
Of course. Adios.